you so much, Gisli. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. It's my honor to invite you today to join me on a fast journey into the future, told from the perspective of a hacker. That's right. Growing up in Tel Aviv, I always wanted to become a hacker. I was fascinated by hackers. And the truth is, today, most of the times, we hear really terrible stories about hackers. Today, I'm here to tell you a different point of view, how hackers might actually be the immune system for our new connected reality. And of course, every time we hear about hackers, we have this sort of image in our minds. Well, let me assure you, back home in Tel Aviv, where I come from, the sun usually shines, and it's way too warm to wear a hoodie and stay in the basement. That's not where I spent most of my time. As a kid growing up, I was imagining what the possibilities of the technology world could do for me. I spent a lot of time on the internet, and I spent a lot of time realizing and imagining new possibilities. The truth is, I didn't look so much like a hacker. I looked more like this. I was such a curious child, and I spent a lot of time asking questions, telling my parents I want to understand how things worked. I would crawl under the table to see how the computer worked, where it was connected, and I would spend a lot of time in my school library and our computer lab, which thankfully we had in my school back in the 90s. Now, since I mentioned I'm here to give you a different impression of what hackers could look like, let's put a real picture up there. This, of course, is not me. This now is a more accurate picture. It's an actual photo from the yearbook of my school, taken just steps away from the beautiful beaches of the sunny Mediterranean in Tel Aviv. And some of you are already trying to find me in that picture. You're looking at me today, and you're thinking, maybe it's that sweet little girl in the front row, or maybe one of those kids in the back row. This is not a trick question, but it will be a little bit difficult for you to identify me in this photo. Yes, I did show up to school that day, and I hope you're ready for it. That's me. Yeah, that's the reality. I was so much of a nerd that I looked like a little boy. And even the kids playing Dungeons and Dragons wouldn't let me join their team. If you know anything about geek cred, you understand that I must have been a real weirdo if even the kids playing Dungeons and Dragons wouldn't let me join. And for that school photo, I showed up, of course, with my state-of-the-art 1993 Sony Walkman. Because in my imagination, it turned me into a cyborg. Already in the 90s, I was imagining how robots and humans will interact. And I thought that technology can go with us everywhere. And that the people who can use that technology to do whatever they like, they are much better than Dungeons and Dragons players. They are like wizards. They're like magicians. That was my vision of how hackers were like. And that vision was actually thanks to one very special woman, a woman whose picture I hope you recognize, although it's from maybe more than 20 years ago. This is what she looked like in 1995. Her name, Angelina Jolie, a beautiful, fierce young hacker in the film Hackers. That Hollywood movie changed my life. Because when I view it, I immediately resonated with the message. In that story, if you haven't seen the film yet, I can tell you that the hackers are not the bad guys. No, these high school kids are the ones who prevent an ecological catastrophe, uncover corporate corruption, and even show the FBI where the real cyber criminal is hiding. That was the kind of hero that I wanted to become for myself. And since then, since the 90s, I've dedicated my life and my work to studying hackers, to becoming like hackers, to understand what we can do more with hackers and how the friendly hackers out there, those hacker heroes, are actually making our world safer. I have researched and tracked the works of many security researchers that you may have never heard of, but have already saved the lives of hundreds and thousands of people. I know it's difficult to imagine hackers saving people's lives, but let's start with one of my first hacker heroes. His name, Barnaby Jack. From New Zealand originally, Barnaby Jack first became infamous for hacking ATM machines. He literally demonstrated how he could make one of these ATM machines throw money at him, physically. This technique was clearly called by his fans jackpotting. Not just in his honor, but because of the jackpot of money that you would win. But he was not a career criminal. He didn't go around the world stealing money from ATMs. No, instead, he demonstrated his capabilities, showing the companies that make these technologies exactly what they were missing, the point of view of a hacker. Later on, about a year after that, he decided to look at something even more intimate to us than cash money. He decided to look at hacking the human body. His research took him to look at these types of devices, embedded medical devices like an insulin pump. These are devices that are controlled by microcomputers and are already making the lives of many diabetic patients better because they can track the insulin levels and the sugar levels all the time, and when needed, release just the right amount of insulin into a patient's bloodstream. But it was only thanks to Barnaby's research it was discovered that these devices can actually be hacked remotely. Using a radio antenna, Barnaby showed a live audience how he can hack one of these devices, telling the little microcomputer inside the insulin pump to release all of the remaining insulin in one single hit into a patient's bloodstream. This, of course, could have dramatic, catastrophic, maybe lethal results. And of course, the company that makes this device never thought about that possibility. It was only thanks to his demonstration that the medical device company changed the way they look at the security of these devices that go into people's bodies. And it was only after this demonstration that the FDA, that's the American regulator in charge of medicines and medical technologies, only now they require cybersecurity testing for any new technology that goes into people's bodies. So it was his work that actually already helped save the lives of many people and changed the way the medical device industry looks at these new technologies. To the people who critiqued him, who said that he was doing something dangerous and reckless, he said this incredibly inspiring response. He said that sometimes it's up to us hackers to demonstrate a threat so that we may spark a solution in the world. And I was absolutely inspired by his words, and I believe this sometimes is the role of the friendly hackers and the security researchers out there, to push the boundaries of what is possible so that we can spark a solution, so that we can galvanize an industry, sometimes change the entire way we look at a particular technology. And that was thanks to what Barnaby did, what happened in the medical device industry. Of course, about a year after that, I was invited to talk about how hackers can be helpful. I took the stage at the annual TED conference, and I shared the idea that sometimes, yes, hackers can be the internet's immune system. I'm happy to say that idea went viral, but I think today in the room, I still need to convince you how hackers can help. So here are a few stories and reasons of what hackers can do for us and why we need to listen to what they have to tell to us, what they have to say to us, how they can act as the immune system for our new connected age. The first lesson I want to share from what hackers have been doing recently is that everything can be hacked. Of course, this is not news to you, but what about your cup of coffee? Can that be hacked as well? It turns out that criminals have figured out a way to turn your Java into money by using JavaScript. In this case, the customers of Starbucks in Argentina had all of their computers, when they were connected to the free Wi-Fi offered by Starbucks, all of their computers were used to mine for cryptocurrency. This was done very elegantly and very quietly by introducing a small piece of JavaScript into the Wi-Fi landing page. So every time you walked into a Starbucks in Argentina, your computer will pull up this landing page. This is the point where you say, I have read and accepted the terms of use. Biggest lie on the internet, but that's besides the point. When you load up that page, your computer runs the code, which is part of that web page. And for 5 to 10 seconds, somebody was using people's computers to mine for cryptocurrencies. In this case, it wasn't Bitcoin, it was actually Monero, which is a very popular new alternative cryptocurrency. And it was mined using this very clever script called CoinHive. The people who developed CoinHive don't think they are doing something wrong. In fact, they believe they invented a new business model, the opportunity for businesses to monetize their website using their users' CPU power. Only in the case of Starbucks, nobody asked Starbucks or the customers if they are willing to participate. You may have heard about this as it also happened with a very popular website, the Pirate Bay Oh, of course, nobody here has heard about it. You are all saints. But although I heard that pirating and the pirates are quite popular in this part of the world, but about 20 million people use this website every day. And so a lot of computers were being used to mine for that virtual currency, Monero. And we're going to see more of these types of creative cryptocurrency mining. And we have to take a lesson about that. What's the lesson here? Well, cryptocurrencies are not going anywhere, and cryptocurrency mining is going to become bigger. As it is now not very lucrative for individual miners to run their own mining environment, it is much more lucrative for criminals to use a lot of other people's computers and sometimes cloud servers to get their cryptocurrencies. Even a very fancy company that I'm sure you've heard of had their cloud computers hacked and used for cryptocurrency mining. In this case, I don't know if you can guess the name of the company, but in this case, it was Tesla. One of the most advanced and sophisticated companies in the world, but an unsecured Kubernetes instance in their Amazon Web Services, in their cloud, was actually used by criminals to mine for quite a lot of cryptocurrencies on Elon Musk's account, if you will. Of course, not his personal account, but the company's account. It was soon discovered and locked down, but we're going to see more cases like this in the years to come. So the criminals in this case are showing us that every digital asset that we leave unsecured, even if it's just our computer as we log on to the Wi-Fi in Starbucks, every digital asset can be used to generate some form of currency, some form of revenue. But of course, it gets a lot more difficult than that. In the past few years, most people first heard about Bitcoin in the context of ransomware. Ransomware are viruses that will encrypt the contents of your computer and then require a small payment, usually a ransom, about $300 worth of Bitcoin, whatever it happens to be on that day, of course. Now, ransomware has become very popular amongst criminals because it's a great way to make money, never mind who your target is. In the case of the UK's National Healthcare Services, the massive ransomware wave called WannaCry actually disrupted 30% of the United Kingdom's national healthcare services. So imagine you have to go to the doctor, or you have an operation scheduled, or you need to do some clinical test, and you can't get your healthcare provided to you because of a ransomware virus. And this is exactly what happened to hundreds and thousands of people in the UK not very long ago. And this virus didn't just hit the UK and not just their national healthcare services. It actually went very wild and spread to a variety of other organizations. For example, a factory owned by Nissan, Renault Nissan in France, had to stop operation. They had to stop producing cars for a couple of hours because their computers on the factory floor were infected. Or a telecommunications company, Telefonica, which is one of the biggest operators in Spain and many other Southern European countries. But to me, it was really interesting when this virus showed up on the information screen in German train stations. In this case, the virus, of course, doesn't affect the movement of trains, but it does affect the trust that people place in this new digital environment. As people show up for their daily commute, they can't even trust the information screens to tell them if they're going into the right train on the right time. And indeed, we will see many attacks like this in the years to come. But how can we stop them? In the case of this virus, WannaCry, it was stopped in a very unusual way. It was stopped because of this really unique and peculiar internet address. Of course, this is an internet address you will never type into your browser, and you will probably not click on it. But one person was curious about this address and where it can lead him. This researcher, who calls himself online Malware Tech, found this internet address hidden inside the code of that virus. He decided he's going to register that internet address, to take control over it, and then to sinkhole all of the traffic that goes into it. That means send all of the traffic that goes into it basically to nowhere, tell it that there is no response. By doing this, he had surprisingly, and unbeknownst to him, actually stopped the infection. Now, this was based on his curiosity alone. He likes researching malware. He didn't know what will happen, but it accidentally stopped a global malware epidemic and prevented so many other computers from being infected. This person was sought after by government agencies and news outlets, and in the UK, the tabloids decided they have to unmask his identity. Who is the person behind the nickname Malware Tech? tech. And who is the man behind the cat, they wanted to know. Indeed, they discovered his identity, and everybody was shocked to learn that his name was Malcolm Hutchins, and he was a 23-year-old person from East England who spends his free time surfing, that doesn't have a formal education in cybersecurity, but simply finds malware fascinating and spends his time researching it. It's thanks to people like Malcolm that that massive virus attack didn't take over more and more computers and didn't destroy more people's lives. So I think we need more people like him that come from all kinds of backgrounds and walks of life, that have all kinds of hobbies. Only a month after this attack, another dangerous virus started spreading. This virus taught us another lesson. The lesson that we are all connected is something you've heard already here before today. But in this case, even the smallest, most negligent computer can turn on the world's largest and most devastating cyber attack yet. In this case, it was actually the very modest server farm of this company from the Ukraine. You'll notice their state-of-the-art cooling solution. Yes, in some countries, we don't have the beautiful weather as you have here today, so we have to cool our computers. Even I had such a cooling solution when I was 12. In this case, this is an actual data farm or a server farm belonging to a accounting software company called MEDoc. This is a company in the Ukraine that makes the Ukraine's most popular tax accounting software. That means that if you do any business in that country, you have to have at least one copy of that software on your machines to report to the tax authorities every month or every year. In this particular case, it was also the patient zero of the world's most devastating cyber attack yet, according to Wired magazine. This attack was called NotPetya. That was its nickname. It was actually a devastating wiper virus. It pretended to be ransomware. It pretended to tell you that you need to pay money to get back access to your file. But instead, it was actually destroying the master boot record portion of your hard drive. It particularly targeted these out-of-date and end-of-life computing environments and operating systems. And it spread like wildfire, using a vulnerability in the way these servers and operating systems communicate on the network. It was able to spread so far and wide that even by having a single computer in your office or in your company that had that particular accounting software, you would get infected. In the case of Maersk, a leading shipping company, just one computer in the port city of Odessa actually led to the infection and wiping of computers across 76 of their shipping terminals all over the world. I'm certain you're familiar with this company because they're the biggest shipping company in the world, and definitely you see their ships and their containers everywhere you go. But for 4 days, in the month of June in 2017, for 4 days, 76 of their terminals couldn't move any of the cargo and the containers because their computers were completely destroyed by this virus. According to their own financial documents, this attack alone cost them about $300 million in damages. According to officials in the White House in the United States, the attack that caused it was one of the world's most devastating attacks and caused significant financial losses to a variety of other organizations. This is just one company that we know about. And people are saying that the number might be even much higher than $300 million. But once again, I'm interested in how we can stop these viruses, not by how fast they spread. In this case, the story of stopping this dangerous virus, actually before it spread to all of these different companies and organizations, it actually began somewhere very interesting. The virus also attacked this place, a factory in Australia, actually in Tasmania. And this is where it got my attention, because this is a factory that makes chocolate. So when viruses disrupt our healthcare, it's very serious. But when they disrupt our chocolate supply chain in the world, that is definitely a problem that we all have to deal with. But it also caught one other person's attention, a person who was just waiting for his cup of beer in a bar with a friend. He was visiting Tel Aviv at the time, and his friend, as always, was late. So he was having his beer, and he was catching up on latest hacker news on Twitter, which is a social network that a lot of hackers use, and hopefully people in the room here use as well. His name was Amit Serper. Amit was reading up on Twitter that this massive virus started wiping computers all over the world, and that it hit different companies and different organizations, spreading so fast. Immediately, he managed to get a sample of the virus from some of his hacker friends. So he managed to get his hands on the actual code of the virus, and he started to pull up his computer in the bar and analyzing it. Throughout his analysis, powered by beer, he actually discovered that within this ransomware, or within this virus that pretends to be ransomware, he could potentially find a kill switch, or even better, a vaccine. So what he discovered in his analysis, that if you actually place a particular file in your C Windows folder, and you call that file perfc, a .dll file, a very particular type of file, if you create a file like that, it will prevent your computer from being infected. In other words, he discovered a vaccine for this terrible virus. Immediately, he shared the word with all of his security researcher friends, and many people started deploying this vaccine to prevent further infections from this dangerous malware. What I found really interesting, though, is that just the morning after, as I mentioned, he was visiting Tel Aviv, enjoying our fine beers and analyzing malware, he was actually in town to speak at a local hacker conference that I am one of the organizers for. And in the morning of the conference, it was none other than the state national television of Russia, which showed up to interview him about his finding. I thought there was a little bit of irony in that, given the fact that most publications and the United States official do believe that this virus originated from Russia. So the fact they were there very quickly to ask his opinion was of interest to me. The lesson we can learn here, though, is that even one computer can start, or one server farm in this case, can start a global attack, and that all of those connections between different industries and organizations can lead to devastating results. But a single individual researching that virus, finding that vaccine, can help make the world safer. The next lesson I have for you today. We have more devices than ever before. Certainly, here at this conference, you're hearing about digital transformation, you're hearing about all the new great gadgets that you can have in your home or office. Well, we now actually have more devices on planet Earth than we have human beings. Don't take my word for it. The Munich Security Conference issued this report. According to them, in 2018, that was the official year planet Earth became planet of the machines, with about 11.2 billion devices, computers, gadgets, and machines, versus only 7.5 billion human beings. That trend of more and more machines and less humans is going to continue exponentially. And of course, that means all of these machines might get hacked, and how can that impact our lives is a question we all need to ask. An interesting tool that could lead us in getting some answers is shodan.io. This is a specific search engine that can allow you to identify internet-connected devices. Perhaps during this conference, you also heard about other ways that you can scan and identify internet-enabled devices here in Iceland and around the world. This search engine can allow you to identify really amazing things. Here is something that was discovered on the search engine. Those of you who speak German might have a clue as to what this does, but I'll tell the rest of you. This is a control mechanism for a very unique means of transportation. With this control interface, you can change the speed of travel, change the direction of travel, or completely stop the vehicle. It's a very unique means of transportation, but there's a few of them around the world. In this case, this is actually this beautiful gondola that would take you up to the fantastic location in Innsbruck, Austria. It's a beautiful mountain up in the Austrian Alps. Why would this be connected to the internet? Is a very good question to ask. Indeed, why? It turns out that the people who run this cable car wanted to make sure that even in adverse weather conditions, they can have full control over the vehicle. So they installed a secure remote management system. Only problem is, it turns out it's not enough to call your system secure, when indeed it's not secured to the best practices in the industry, where the username and password is something that is trivial, and where it runs on vulnerable operating systems and computers. This was discovered not by a James Bond supervillain, but thankfully a pair of friendly hackers from Germany who actually call themselves the Internet Watchers. They claim that they were able to discover this and report it to the Austrian authorities in time, thereby preventing any further damages from happening. So we need more hackers like them, because we're going to get more devices in more of our computing environments and homes. We're going to get those so-called surveillance devices by some of the previous speakers, the virtual digital assistants in our home or office. Who will check that they are actually as secure as they claim to be? Not always the company that makes them. Sometimes it does require those external hackers to help us identify the threats. And this is where I believe, as we move to the future, this is the role that hackers can play and help us get even safer. Of course, we can disregard all of these technologies. You can join the dinosaurs outside, have a fun time. But if you want to adopt new digital technologies, we're going to need all the help we can get. I believe some of that help and the best defense can actually come from a friendly offense. So what am I talking about here? I'm talking about friendly hackers helping us. And yes, hackers might look a little funny. Our hair might have different colors, or we wear heavy metal t-shirts. That doesn't mean that we're the bad guys. Indeed, the real bad guys might actually be the bugs that exist in software, devices, and technology everywhere around the world. And this is where hackers who participate in bug bounty programs come into the picture, helping us get safer. Bug bounty programs have existed for a few years, and you can see some very popular companies that actually have these bug bounty programs in place. In simple words, these are frameworks that allow companies to actively work with friendly hackers who report vulnerabilities to them. You might see some of your favorite brands up there, but let's talk about a company that we mentioned earlier, a company that everybody is interested in, Tesla. They actually brought their flagship product, the Tesla Model S, to the world's largest convention of hackers in Las Vegas. And they asked the hackers, work with us. We won't just give you money or a cool t-shirt, we'll give you something that's worth even more. These are the Tesla Challenge coins that are only given to the top hackers that are finding the most critical vulnerabilities in Tesla's products, their cloud services, their cars, their software. Last summer, I saw Elon Musk, the founder of Tesla, in person come to this hacker convention to hire the best talent for his company. Another organization took a lesson from Tesla. This time, it's called the Pentagon. The United States Department of Defense launched a first-of-its-kind program to work with friendly hackers. They call it Hack the Pentagon. And of course, they give out these medals. There now exists medals for Hack the Air Force, Hack the Army, and soon I hear Hack the Marines. Who wins these medals? This is Jack Cable. He won all 3 of them in his last year of high school, before turning 18. This is the kind of talent that programs like this can help organizations find. From the moment the program was launched until they received their first valid vulnerability report, it only took 13 minutes. That might be funny, but consider how many weeks or months the bad guys, terrorists, spies, criminals, how many days have they had access to those secure systems? They will not tell you about what they're doing, and even if you give them a medal, they won't participate. It's the friendly hackers that we need to reach out to. And so today we have more friendly hackers than ever before, which is really great news, because according to many workforce reports, the cybersecurity industry needs more than 1 million professionals in the years to come. And I believe those professionals will come from the friendly hacker organizations and movements. They will also come from the Girl Scouts, because the American Girl Scouts movement is now teaching Girl Scouts cybersecurity and hacking skills. Maybe more useful skills for our future than learning how to tie a rope or start a fire. I think we need more of these types of movements. Indeed, when I visit a hacker convention like DEF CON, I see talent, I see curiosity, I see innovation. I don't see 30,000 criminals. I also see the next generation of hacking. And some of it is machines. This is the first of its kind competition for supercomputers to hack one another. You've heard a lot about AI in this conference. In this case, these 7 machines competed on hacking tasks autonomously, without any human involved in the process. This is the winner, Mayhem. This is the machine that won the challenge, a $2 million prize that went to the students which developed it. This machine is now in the American History Museum, and it is a part of our history. But will AI hacking and hacking by AI be a part of our future? This is a question we must ask ourselves today. And I believe that for a safer future, we actually need more humans who can always outsmart the machines. This is why I'm extremely hopeful when I see the kids that attend hacking conventions. These are some of the kids that come to DEF CON each year with their parents because they believe hacking is a good idea for their future. You can see they come from all genders, all walks of life, all ethnicities, and we need more kids like that. If you'd like to learn about how to teach your kids about hacking, I invite you to come out to a beautiful sunny place and think beyond your boundaries. That place is beautiful Tel Aviv, where we hold each year Tel Aviv Cyber Week. You can find our cyber Trojan horse in the entrance to our biggest hall at Tel Aviv University. And if you have the right key, maybe you can find your way into our hacker event, which is called B-Sides Tel Aviv. I've given you a lot of ideas and things to think about, but more than anything, I wish for you to think about the fact that hackers can actually make you safer. Thank you very much for your time, and stay safe.